Many web apps require middleware. Middleware just sits between your request and the actual response from the server. When you hit the server, you can then alter the request and then send something back or check authentication perhaps or log some kind of event on that request before sending back the actual page. You can even set up sequences of events so that things occur one after the other before the final request is sent back. And Astro provides this in both SSG and SSR mode. On top of that, Astro includes in the context object a locals object where you can actually interact with data in the front end of an Astro file. We're going to look at all that and more in this brief overview of Astro middleware. Hey, what's up? My name is Chris and welcome to Coding in Public. Okay, so let's get started with this basic middleware example. I just got the basics template that you get in the Astro CLI open over here. And the first thing we're going to do is open up the sidebar. We're going to add a new file here under SRC called middleware.ts. You can also do .js as well. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the docs over here just to kind of show you we're following this step by step. Now, the first thing you have to do is export a function called onRequest. This cannot be a default export. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can see here, you can just do it just like this, but this will not be typed. So what I'm going to do instead, since I'm using TypeScript, is go ahead and grab something called define middleware. So let's export a const. This needs to be called onRequest. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull in this define middleware action right here from Astro middleware. Now, this will give us our typing here as well. Now, since this is an arrow function, I'm going to go ahead and grab the context right here, and I'm also going to grab the next function that I'll get back. And you see that right here as well, we just now have it typed. Now, all I have to do in the middleware is return some kind of response. Now, thankfully, next is a response, so I can just say return next like this, and then I have to remember how to write arrow functions, and once we do that, we should be set to go. Okay, so here we go, we've got this defined middleware function. Now, so we can see what's going on here, I'm going to go ahead and console.log in here, like in middleware or something like that. All right, so that way we know it's actually firing. Now, whenever you do this, make changes, sometimes you have to restart the dev server. So let's go ahead and do that. Then I'm going to jump over here to the home page. And as soon as I refresh here, you're going to see that Console Ninja here shows me in middleware. Console Ninja is just an extension that shows you your logs directly in your file here. But you can see down here in the server logs, it says in middleware. So it's actually firing. Now let's go ahead and open up the index route. And let's add something up here as well, just to see the order of how this works. So we're going to do console.log, homepage. Now, before I show you the server logs, what will happen as far as the order here? You see it is logging, but will this log first or will the middleware log first? Well, the whole point of the middleware is that it's going to log first, and then it will continue on with a request. That's why we passed on the next right here, this next function. So every time you hit a route, it will first of all hit your middleware, it will do anything you ask it to do, and then it will simply continue on with the request. In this case, just the simple next function. And that's really the power of middleware. You can use it for logging, you can use it for authentication. Every route that's hit first has to run through your middleware and then eventually continue on with request. I don't have to actually have a next request here. I could just return a new response. So for instance, I could just pass on some kind of body like json.stringify, and we could say like success is true. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice I no longer get my homepage. I'm now just getting this right here. Now, if I check the server logs here, you'll see I say in middleware, but it never actually renders my home route because it never gets the chance to. It doesn't forward on the next request, so it doesn't continue on with the request I planned on. Instead, it simply says, hey, I'm going to return this JSON data instead. So this only needs to be some kind of response. Obviously, you typically would not do that, but you might do a check on the context's URL or something like that, and then decide what you want to show to the user. Now, let's talk next about this context right here. If I were to console log the context, console.log context, you'll see that down below here, what I'm going to get is all the context right here. Now, because I'm in SSG mode, this is essentially limited to the URL itself, but you still get some helpful things like what URL is being hit, what the path name is, so this will be important for us. So let's look at this path name and decide to do something with this, like redirect the user. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here, and all we're going to do is do a little check here. We're going to check the context.url.pathname. We're going to ask if this equals a /. So if it's the home route, then what I want to do is something else. Here we're going to use the response redirect method to redirect somebody from this homepage to a new route. So what we're going to say is if they try to hit the home route, what I want to do is instead is to redirect them. So we'll have a response.redirect. And here I need to pass a full URL. So probably the easiest thing to do here is just to construct this directly here. So we'll say new URL here. And first of all, I have to give it kind of the string URL, the path I want it to go to. That will be redirected. And then I need to pass the base URL. And I can get this from the context.url. So all we're doing here is saying, give me the base URL. This would be localhost 4321 in dev, and then whatever my production URL happens to be appended with this right here, this redirected. Now, finally, I need to pass a type of redirect. This would be a 302 status. Okay, so just like that, it should redirect. If I save it, it's going to mess up because I don't yet have that route created. So let's create that quickly. We're going to call this redirected. And in here, we're going to say redirected in the console. And then let's also maybe just get rid of this whole main and replace it with an H1 that says redirected. Okay, so now if I save this and I save this middleware, and this should refresh and it gives me redirected instead. So what it's done is it's hit this and realized, hey, I'm actually at this path name. I'm going to return this instead of whatever it was planning on doing, this next method. Now, if I open up the server logs and we scroll all the way down, you'll see it says in middleware, and then it says redirected. Now, why is it saying in middleware? Well, what it's done is it's first of all hit this right here before it's rendered either this or the home page, and then redirected here. Now, once it hits this redirected route, this no longer matches. So first of all, it says in middleware, and then remember on a redirected page, redirected, it's then going to console log this. So that's kind of the order of events that have happened. Now, if I jump back over to the middleware docs, you'll see that there's more we can do than just interact with the request itself. The context itself also includes something called .locals. Now, this is true for both SSG and SSR mode. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove our console log since we know it's actually working. We know we're in the middleware. What I want to do is grab the context.locals, and I can set anything I want on this. This is an object where I can just access it in the front matter of any Astro file. So let's say title, since that's what they've got, we could do like homepage title or something like that. Now you'll notice right here, I don't have this typed properly. We'll get around to that in a second. But what I can do is come over here to the index route, and now I can access this directly here. So const data equals astro.locals. This will give me the entire object itself, or I can just extract from this if I want to just the title. All right, and if I do that, let's go ahead and come down here, and maybe let's get rid of all this again. So this will be in the main route, and we're just going to have an H1 where the title is right here. So let's come back over here, and I'll go back to my home page, and now it says home page title. And we're getting this from the middleware right here. I mentioned it's not typed properly. You can actually type this yourself if you want to. So if I come over here, here's where you would actually add the typing. So let's come over here. If you're using TypeScript, you can see here you have to declare a namespace. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you just declare the different things you might have on this locals object. So I'm going to get rid of all this, and we'll just have a title. And this happens to be a type of string. So now if I come back over here, you'll notice that it knows there's a title there and it knows it's a type of string. Same thing over here, we got rid of that as well. So anything you have in this, you can type over here, and that way you know whether or not it exists. Now you can obviously combine these as well. So you could take like the path name and say, hey, if it's this path name, then go ahead and set this particular property in this object locals to whatever. All right, so you can interact with these in different ways. Let's go ahead and come back up here though, and let's look a little bit more at this context object. Now it's important to note that this context object is only for this single individual route that it's rendered. So on this particular request, it's going to set the name to John Wick, then it's going to pass back a function as well, and then it will call the next function, so it will just continue along with what it was planning on doing. Down here, you'll see that it allows us to actually grab things like the title, which in this case you get from the function, or orders, which I don't think they actually have up here. Do they? No. They're just saying that you could pass along orders that would be like some kind of entries field. So I'm guessing this is some kind of map that they're saying, and then they're mapping over it as well. Now, just a quick note here that the value of locals cannot be overridden at runtime. Like I mentioned, this locals object will not exist on a new route. So you can't like pass this along. It's for each individual request. It's essentially wiped out, and it dies within a single Astro route. Now, like I mentioned, you can use middleware for things like logging. So you could log like the response time of your server. You could log which routes or which methods are being hit. You could also use it to actually change the HTML of the file. Finally, another thing people do a lot is authentication. So we can check if somebody is logged in or not, and then either redirect them or send some kind of message if they're not actually logged in. But let's go ahead and look at this redacting sensitive information one as an example. So if I come over here, and perhaps we had like lorem 50 or something like that, and somewhere in the middle of this, we have the phrase private info. All right, so we got one there, and let's come down here and let's also have an H2, and this will just say private info as well. And then we'll come down here one more time and have like lorem 20. And right in the middle, we'll say private info. Okay, so we've got 3 times where this phrase private info shows up. So let's go ahead and come into the middleware here. And instead of actually returning next, let's do what they're doing down here below. So let's get rid of this. And I'm going to come in here and say, first of all, what I want to do is grab the response is what I'm going to call it, since that's what they call it. And we're just going to await next. Now, what we're doing here is saying, hey, go ahead and give me the full response here that I'm going to get passed on if I were to grab this function. And as you can see here, I need this to be an async function, and that way I can actually do awaiting inside of it. Once I get this, I'm going to go ahead and grab the HTML, In fact, since I'm just writing all this down, let's just copy this because we're just using this as a simple example anyhow, just to talk through kind of what they're showing here. What it's going to do is, first of all, parse the text. And so you can get this with just the .text method. This is like the .json method, except it just returns here plain text from the HTML document itself. Then I'm simply going to replace any strings of private info with redacted. And then finally, instead of returning the next function, I want to return my altered HTML. In that case, I'm just going to return all this right here, this new response with whatever the redacted HTML is. So a new HTML document with that text stripped out and the status text of 200, and I'll pass along the headers that came along to start with. Okay, so if I come back over here, we load this page here, you'll notice it says redacted, redacted, oh no, private info. I have no idea why that did not change. So let's go ahead and come in here and just see what we got going on. Okay, so this is the HTML text. You see we've got private, oh, look at this. It's got some line break here. Interesting. See, look at that. Oh, wait, it's not there. Down here. Okay, so private info. And maybe let's just make sure we save without formatting. And then I'll refresh. And yeah, it says redacted now. So that was the problem. So yeah, if you're replacing plain text, which is not a great use case for middleware anyhow, but just showing you kind of what the process is. So you actually get the response, you can parse it, figure out what's in it, and then return a new HTML response if you want to. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. So typically what you do is maybe if somebody is not logged in, so you'd first of all check their login status here. So like check auth status. And if they're not authenticated, then you might redact particular information, or you might show a certain form or those kinds of things. So you can do all of this here in this middleware. If I come back over here to the middleware docs, they give you more information on typing. This is what we've already done and how to set up these types. We've done that, but often you'll want to actually chain middleware. And for that, you can use this sequence method where you can essentially pass it along from one to the next. So the order here will be the validation. Now what's going to do is, first of all, look for the next request. Now the next request at this point is the auth, right? So it's going to actually come down here and check the auth. The auth does the same thing. It's going to first of all grab the next thing in the chain, which is down here, this greeting, and then it will basically go backwards, right? Because once it's hit this next, this would be the final route it's supposed to hit. So then we should get this log, and then this log. So if I come down here, they're actually going to talk you through this as well. So in case that didn't make sense here, first of all, you're going to get this validation request console logged right here. Then we're going to actually request the next item in the sequence. That's what this function does. It passes along the next logical step in the sequence. In this case, we've actually defined a specific sequence. So then it will hit this right here. It's still awaiting all of this to happen. This also has its own little await function where it will request the next thing, which is down here, and it will greet request. In this case, we don't have to go to another function. This just gives us the initial route we are going to hit as the final thing we're going to hit. So then it will console log this. And now that this is no longer waiting for anything, this can run, and then this will run right here. And since this is no longer waiting for anything, now this can run, and this can run. And then eventually the final response will get passed on, which is just the route we were going to hit in the first place with whatever things we've chained here kind of along for the ride. Now, if you're interested in a more complex example using auth, my course, learnastro.dev, we're going to do something very much like this, but this is the kind of the concepts behind what we're going to be doing. Finally here, I just want to point out the error pages right here. That middleware will attempt to run for all on-demand pages, even when matching routes can't be found. I mention that because depending on your deployment platform, they may process this a little bit differently, so you just want to check this out in production. Also, for 500 error pages, you won't have access to the astro.locals. That's another thing you need to pay attention to. So just to point those out for you, but this whole concept of server middleware is really helpful, and we've got access to it directly in Astro. Now, we've really just looked at the SSG features of middleware. Just like with any request, when you're in SSR mode, you get way more access to things. So one thing I could do is come over here. We could just add an adapter. So npx astro add. Let's just add the node adapter. And I'll just say yes to all these things and get this back up and running. Now this will give us access to a little bit more as well. This context object will include more than just the standard URL. So let me go ahead and come over here. We're going to create one more route here. This will just be API postroute.json.ts. And here this is an API route. We want to export a const we're going to call post, all uppercase. And if I want to type this, I can type it with API route. And here we're just going to return a new response, and we'll just say null or something like that. Okay, so we've actually got this route right here we can hit. In fact, maybe we should return something useful. So let's say like json.stringify. We'll say like, I don't know, success equals true. Okay, so if we hit post_route.json, we should get this back. So let's go ahead and come over here, and let's get rid of all our redacted info. I guess we'll just console log it out. And here we're going to have a button. Let's say like get stuff. And down here at the bottom, let's go ahead and grab access to that button. So we'll say document.querySelector. And in this case, we're just going to grab the button tag, which you probably shouldn't do, but that's okay. In fact, let's not even capture this in a constant. Let's just run the event listener directly off here. So we'll add an event listener where we'll listen for a click. And when that click happens, all we want to do is fetch that endpoint. So here we're going to fetch. This will just be API post route.json. And this needs to be a method of post. And that way we can actually hit the endpoint. And then let's go ahead and console log this down here. All right, so if I come back over here, we should have stuff change. There we go. If I get stuff, we actually get this promise back, which means I need to await this. And this needs to be async. Okay, let's try it again. I'll get stuff, and now I should actually get back my basic response. Oh, what I need to get is, we're going to call this data equals res.json, which we will also await. And right here, we're then going to console log this. Okay, so there we go. If I click this one more time, we should actually get back success equals true. So we're actually getting back our data. Now, the reason I set this whole thing up is what I want to do is capture that same request right over here, and I can do that now that I have SSR mode enabled. So I'm going to get rid of all this right here, and I want to check simply the method that's been used. So here I'm going to check the context.request.method, and I can check that this equals post. So if it equals post, let's just go ahead and console.log, like post route hit or something like that. And then finally down here, I do need to, so I don't get yelled at, I need to return some kind of response either way. So there we go. So if I load this homepage, this is obviously not a post route, right? It's just a get route. So if I come over here and I look at the server logs, I don't see anything down this way. However, what happens if I click get stuff done? Well, now it's going to actually hit that post route. So in the middleware, I can capture that a post route has been hit. So this might be really useful for logging and saying, hey, if this particular route is hit, I want to check the headers that came along with that to make sure that I was actually hitting it, who was hitting it, where were they coming from, were they authenticated, those kinds of things. Those might be things you want to check. And now that we're using SSR mode, you can actually check those methods because something other than get is available. Well, I hope that was a big help in understanding the basics of Astro middleware. If you're interested more in middleware, I'll be posting more content like this on my channel, so make sure you subscribe. And if you're interested in a more in-depth tutorial on middleware and authentication, check out my course at learnastro.dev. Thanks so much. I'll catch you in the next one. Happy coding.